Good morning, you guys. It's your boy Bill Mahari here, representing Mahari Nation Sports Podcast. Much love to the entire LDBC and the basketball community. If you want more basketball content, tune in to Basketball Conversations every Friday night, 9 p.m. Central Time. This is where we discuss basketball related topics, news, debates, and everything else in the world of basketball. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon to get all the latest notifications when I drop videos and live streams. And if you want to donate to the channel, I'll set up the PayPal links and Cash App links underneath the description box if you want to donate anything, any money to the value of this channel. All donations will be appreciated. Now, with all that out the way, let's get down to the top show we have for you today. This is another historical perspective of episode that we're going to do on today. This time around, we're going to discuss about a coach that made a huge impact in college basketball, and that is Mr. Jerry Tarkanian, the former coach of the UNLV Running Rebels. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, the son of Armenian immigrants, he was born in Lucid, Idaho in 1930. Okay, his mother was basically a survivor of the Armenian genocide. Okay, so when the couple moved to the United States, all right, his father died when he was 13 years old. But during that time when he was a kid, he basically showed major interest in sports. Okay, even though his stepfather disapproved, his mother basically encouraged him to pursue it. A graduate at Pasadena High School, he initially attended Pasadena College in California and played basketball for only one season in 1950 through 1951 until he transferred to Frenso State University, where he played for the Bulldogs in the 1954-55 season as a backup guard. And after graduating from Fresno State, he earned a master's degree in educational management from the University of Redlands, and he returned back within 5 years to start his coaching career in California. He began his coaching career at San Joaquin Memorial High School in Fresno. Then he moved up to Antelope Valley High School in 1958 in Lancaster. Then in Redlands High School in 1959 to 1960. Then he moved up to their junior college level at Riverside City College from 1961 to 1966, and then moved up to Pasadena City College from 1966 to 1968, where then he coached teams to a record 4 straight junior college championships, 3 at Riverside and 1 at Pasadena. Then he received his first break when he moved to the NCAA Division I level, when he received his first coaching job at Long Beach State from 1968 to 1973. He was one of the first coaches to shun the unwritten rule of 3 of the starting guards had to be white. He also pioneered the use of junior college students. All right. So when he was coaching through the team, okay, one of the things he basically did though at that time is when he helped lead the Long Beach State team to the 1970 NCAA tournament, led by All-American Ed Ratliff. He boasted the team consisted of a mostly entirely junior college transfer. His teams in Long Beach State reached 4 straight NCAA tournaments, establishing himself as a regional power. Through the schools that were best separated by 30 miles, John Wooden refused to schedule games with them. Surprisingly, at the peak of the dynasty, the schools met in the 1971 West Regional Final. Long Beach State at that game led by 12 until UCLA came back and won the game 57-55 en route to their 5th straight national championship. So pretty much by that time, he was pretty much coaching his team into a regional powerhouse that UCLA didn't want nothing to do with and only met him one time. But by the time in 1973, he was actually given a coaching opportunity to coach the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And initially, he didn't want to take the job, but he was kind of, attracted and lured into the job by, a lot of loyal boosters that wanted to, improve the college program. So prior to his arrival to UNLV, they were dubbed the Tumbleweed Tech by the locals, and the basketball program during that period had no winning records and had minimal fan support. However, he was able to turn that entire basketball program around to one of the most dominant powerhouses of that time, coaching the Running Rebels from 1973 to 1992. And it was the surprising thing that I learned from him was that it was Tarkanian's idea to call his team the Running Rebels, all right? Because his teams were known for up-tempo style, stifling defenses, and would go on long runs that would turn into close games into major blowouts. And in fact, there were a couple of times during his tenure where they would lead the nation in average scoring. Okay, and in 1977, 7 years when they basically joined the division run ranks, the Rebels during that year scored average of 109 points per game that season in an era before the shot clock or the three-point shot was implemented. And in 1977, they made their first ever trip to the Final Four when it ended up losing to Dean Smith and the famous four corners offense and lost in the semifinals to North Carolina. All right. Then after several years of facing against scrutiny and possible suspensions by the NCAA, which we're going to get into a little bit later, okay, his team returned back to the Final Four, returned back to powerhouses in 83, 84, and pretty much almost became one of the best teams in the country. Okay, I should say at 82, 83. My mistake. So by 1987, they were basically the number one team in the nation there too as well. And we're pretty much one of the top ranked teams in the country and the favorites to win the national championship, only to lose in the Final Four against Bob Knight and the Indiana Hoosiers in the national semifinals that went on to win the national championship thanks to Keith Smart's game-winning shot against Syracuse. All right. But during that time, all right, the NCAA was pretty much trying to do everything they can to slow down UNLV from winning a national championship because they pretty much wanted to get rid of Jerry Tarkanian in any way possible. Okay. So from during that 89-90 season, that famous season when they won their first ever national championship, okay, that team was heavily monitored by the NCAA. They visited their campuses 11 times and suspended 10 different players at various times. All right. But they still were able to overcome all those suspensions to finish with a 30-5 record and went on to win their first ever national championship by blowing out the UNLV Running Rebels in one of the lopsided championship games in history. 103-73. It was one of the worst beatdowns you'll ever see. That team was composed of Stacey Augmon, Anderson Hunt, Greg Anthony, okay, and also Larry Johnson, you know what I mean, Moses Scurry, Anderson Hunt, all of them great players from various junior colleges that pretty much helped that team win that national championship. Then in 1990-91, the NCAA originally wanted to suspend him for recruiting violations, but after a compromise in 1990-91, UNLV was able to defend their championship. Actually, say they were allowed to defend their championship, and they went on a tear. They went 34-0, and they were poised to defend their national championship in a rematch against Duke. By that time, before that semifinal, they were defeating their opponents by an average of at least 27 points per game. But by that time, Duke was a better team by that time and well prepared to confront against the UNLV Rebels, and they went on to defeat the Rebels 79-77 in one of the biggest upsets in the history of the Final Four, and they went on to win their first ever national championship, the first of two titles of the 90s. All right, and by that period of time, the dominance of the UNLV team came to an end because by that time, Larry Johnson graduated, Greg Anthony graduated, and they were going to be banned from the postseason play for the 91-92 season. So now we're going to get into his NCAA battles. Tarkanian have been under more or less constant scrutiny throughout his entire career with the NCAA. All right, but he was able to manage right through all of that to pretty much build one of the greatest programs at that time in college basketball. Okay, so let's get into some of this stuff here. Okay, as I pull this up real quick. So, Mr. Tarkanian spent most of his career as a Division I coach in battle with the NCAA. During his time with Long Beach, he wrote a newspaper article charging that the NCAA ignored improprieties at powerful schools while it pursued smaller and more defenseless institutions. After he left Long Beach State, its basketball program was slapped with probation and recruiting violations that occurred under his watch. Just before the 76-77 season, the NCAA placed UNLV on 2 years probation for questionable practices, although the alleged violations date back to 71, way before Tarkanian became coach at UNLV. But the NCAA pressured UNLV to try to suspend him as coach for 2 years. Then Tarkanian countered back and sued him, claiming that the suspension violated his right to due process. In October of 77, a Nevada judge issued an injunction that reinstated Tarkanian as coach. Eventually, the case made it all the way to the Supreme Court of the U.S., in which it ruled in 1988 that the NCAA had the right to discipline its member schools, reversing the 77 injunction. In the decade between the original suspension and the Supreme Court ruling, it was revealed that the NCAA's enforcement process was stacked heavily in the NCAA's favor. In fact, so heavily, it created the perception that there was no due process. This is kind of the stuff that we kind of see a lot in the NCAA. But to continue on forward, the enforcement side was allowed to build cases on hearsay and shared few of their findings with the targeted school. As a result, this created a negative perception of the NCAA to institute a clear separation between the enforcement staff and the infractions committee, as well as a system for appeals. Also, hearsay evidence was no longer admissible in infractions violations. All right. And then came to his dismissal from UNLV. So, months after they lost this to the semifinals, the Las Vegas Review-Journal, which was a newspaper in Las Vegas, published a picture showing Tarkanian's 3 other players in a hot tub with Mr. Perry, who was basically a known gambler and a known booster for, UNLV. Okay. And the picture was taken back in 1989, and only months after Tarkanian claimed that he tried to tell his player to stay away from Richard Perry. Okay. But on June 7th of 1991, pretty much Tarkanian would have resigned his duty as the coach of UNLV after one more season. And already banned from postseason play, his team went on to have a 26-2 record and won his final game there against Utah State. So pretty much he was pretty much under scrutiny the whole time when he was in UNLV. And it got so bad that even after he was fired from the San Antonio Spurs, when he went into the NBA after his duty as a coach, he sued the NCAA, claiming that he harassed them for 2 decades. And the harassment also said that Tarkanian claimed that started back when he was writing the newspaper column, alleging that the NCAA was willing to punish less prominent schools. And even though the NCAA didn't admit to that, they basically settled out of court in 1998, paying them, get this, $2.5 million. So you pretty much know that Jerry Tarkanian was pretty much getting the raw end of the stick every single time, while other programs like UCLA was doing a lot more worse stuff than UNLV did. And they were able to get away with it under their own watches. So you guys can get the vibe of that. Okay. But after spending 1 season in San Antonio, he continued on his coaching career at Fresno State at his alma mater, and he led them to 6 consecutive 20-win seasons, and led them to 5 NIT tournaments and 2 NCAA tournament appearances before retiring from coaching in 2002 with 778 career Division I wins. Following his retirement, once again, the NCAA placed Fresno State on probation, committed that they would basically committed numbers of violations under Tarkanian's watch. Go figure. You know that the constant thing about what Jerry Tarkanian was is that Tarkanian was proven right, that every time the NCAA tried to prove that there was numerous violations, they were never able to prove it. So pretty much the NCAA wanted to basically mess around with him to try to make him as his whipping boy, and he wasn't be willing to do that. And y'all know what that is. You know what I'm saying? But by that time, he had to wait almost an entire decade before in 2003, he eventually was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And unfortunately, the reason why he had to wait a long time before his Hall of Fame induction was his battles and his wars with the NCAA. But there was a lot of coaches like Larry Brown, Mike Krzyzewski, Jim Calhoun. They all gave a lot of praises to this guy. I even remembered one quote from Mike Krzyzewski. He pretty much said, he taught us pressure man-to-man defense as well as anyone's ever done. And Jim Calhoun said he was one of the best defensive teachers of defense in the last 25 to 30 years of basketball. Just all these great accomplishments. So now we're going to talk about his influence into the game, okay? So Tarkanian was an innovator that had his teams playing pressing defense, a defense that forces turnover to his run and gun offense. And early on, when the NCAA added the 3-point shot in 1986, he was one of the few coaches to effectively use the shot. And regularly, he recruited players, even that his peers often passed on over, and taking the chances on junior college students who had troubled past and had issues. His players pretty much hailed predominantly in urban areas, and he allowed his team to have the freedom to express themselves. While those some of those players were high maintenance, he was the rare coach that was able to blend various personalities together into a team and play with a unique swagger. All right. And pretty much the influence of the UNLV teams during the late 80s and early 90s made a huge impact on college basketball. In fact, the Fab Five, even if the Fab Five was pretty much the carbon copy of the UNLV team, if you guys know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? He was able to transform UNLV from a small commuter college into one of the best basketball programs in the country. You know what I mean? And today, the Thomas and Mack Center is now named Jerry Tarkanian Court in honor of him. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, he was able to have his court name after him. And then 2 years later, he died in February 11th of 2015. But when you're talking about the impact of his defense, his impact to the game is called one of the most unique but one of the most difficult defenses to teach, and that is called the amoeba defense. Okay, originally it was developed by Fran Webster, an assistant coach for the Pittsburgh basketball team back in the 70s. But basically Gertwich, and then basically Mr. Webster taught the defense, and through his assistant coaches like Charlie Reed and Tim Gergich, until Tim Gergich became an assistant to UNLV under Jerry Tarkanian, they were able to utilize the amoeba defense and took it to another level that no one has ever seen before. So pretty much Jerry Tarkanian's ability to use pressure defense and straight up man-to-man full court defense was his impact. The amoeba defense is a defense that is used to wear down the offense. It's a rather risky defense that it mixes man-to-man and zone defenses all together. It's pretty much a defense that is set up like a diamond. The two quickest players are usually the point guard and the shooting guard that are going to be set on the top of the key just above the free throw line, while your biggest defender, primarily the center and the power forward, is set up underneath the basket, and your two other defenders are set on the opposite sides of the lane just below the elbows. Now, in defending the passes to the wing, the defender at the top of the key picks up the dribble, advancing up the court. The defender at the free throw line then sprints out and picks up the entry pass. All right. Now, this is where it gets tricky here. Then the top defender initially drops back to the free throw line where the defender is now guarding the ball previously that has been. If the ball handler begins to pick up the defender just below the elbow on the same size as the ball, then he would double team the ball handler, and with the defender already having the ball. The defender below the opposite side then drops underneath the basket, while the defender is previously held under the basket and fronts the offensive player in the post. The defender originally is at the top of the key now and is at the free throw line, anticipating the next pass in hopes of intercepting the pass and starting the fast break. When you defend passes to the corner, when the ball is passed into the corner, the corner defender, who usually starts underneath the basket, should sprint out to the ball. The defender is originally playing below the rim, then drops in front of the offensive post player. The defender originally at the free throw line is now underneath the wing, denying the pass back up to the wing. The defender originally is occupying the space below the elbow or on the opposite side of the ball, and now dropped underneath the basket and has the basket side responsibility, while the defender originally at the top of the key stands at the free throw line and has his top side responsibility. When you defend the skip passes, in the event of a skip pass, the defender with the backside responsibility should spread out to guard the ball. The defender guarding the ball then shifts back under the basket where they started. The defender who has been fronting both the post then sprints over to the position under the elbow on the opposite side. The defender at the free throw line then sprints out to deny the back top while the defender that has been previously denying the pass to the wing shifts back to the free throw line where they originally had started. And then it goes on from there, though. So one of the big advantages that the UNLV team had was that it was pretty much a gambling defense. And if the defense was used correctly, it can lead to fast breaks, easy layups, corner threes. It was pretty much a defense that fueled their fast break offense. But if the defense gets beaten, that means the opposition can have an opportunity to get an uncontested shot or a layup. You know what I mean? But when it's used in effective cooperation and effective communication with the man-to-man defense, this can disrupt any offense and lead to many scoring streaks. This is how the UNLV team pretty much, fueled their offense by basically playing a zone man-to-man defense, and with various responsibilities, they can steal passes and start out the fast breaks. That's how they were able to be successful all these years. You know what I mean? So I really believe that Jerry Tarkanian's influence of pressure defense and combining zone defenses with man-to-man pretty much was the talking point of his career, and pretty much renovated defenses you see in today's basketball. So I wanted to give a lot of love and respect to a guy that has pretty much deserved it all of his career. And RIP to Jerry Tarkanian, one of the great legendary coaches in the game, and a guy that had really innovated a lot of what we see in today's basketball too. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Let me know what your memories are of Jerry Tarkanian and the UNLV teams and how he influenced the game. And you'll check out later on for some more videos. Y'all have a great day, guys.